There was a research assistant of one of our federal judges that became a very close friend of mine. He was a kid who didn't talk about things. He talked about he talked about philosophy and ideas. And I learned when he wanted to be a teacher. Ultimately, he died of leukemia. And when he died, I determined that I would go into teaching. I was in a 2-year doctorate program on law and psychiatry. And so when I finished that, that's when I had the opportunity to find a school, and Syracuse opened its doors, and I came here. The memory I have best is the year that we formed our first trial team. And without really knowing what it was that we were doing, our team won the national championship. That led to the formation of the following fall, to our trial competition that later became the Grossman competition. So that probably is my finest memory of it. Many students had an influence, and I would be loath to name one, except there was one that had an extraordinary impact, and that was Emil Rossi. He came aboard when I was in the late 1960s. He became my research assistant. And of course, it was with Emil that he and I had the first national trial competition. He was so good in teaching and reaching out to young people, and although he was my, quote, assistant, he was really my superior. And I worked with him for many, many years. And of course, he was our finest trial teacher until he retired a couple of years ago. And I really enjoyed working with the students in my trial classes, working one-on-one with them for 14 weeks. You could see them develop something you couldn't do even with seminars or small classes. It's an extraordinary experience to work closely one-on-one with students, as the clinicians do and as our trial teachers do. I still work with Joanne Van Dyke and occasionally with others. I still work with the students in their trial, and I also sit occasionally on the appellate competition, and that keeps me alert and active. I think what the award to me signifies is the feeling, I guess, that the alums remember that they have had with me, and they think perhaps I've done something useful for the university. So this award is very, very special to me.
I think the two professors that had the biggest impact on me while I was at Syracuse would have been Professor Laura Leib and Professor Wilhelmina Rubin Cook. Professor Laura Leib actually was very interesting because I didn't think I would ever like property, but she helped to make it, I don't know if it was practical, tangible, real, and the way she sort of drilled in the rule against perpetuities, I will never forget her as long as I live, because on my bar exam was the rule against perpetuities. So I thought that was funny. And Professor Wilhelmina Rubin Cook was the only female professor of color. So she was also a person who was very involved in communications law, which was something that I thought that I wanted to pursue at that time. You know, my fondest memories of law school are actually not at the school itself. It was really about the support of some of my classmates throughout the process. So one example was my first year of law school, I actually got the chicken pox. So while I was in spring break and at my apartment in quarantine, several of my classmates actually came by, brought me food, and called me and made me, laughed and joked. And it just made me realize that maybe I was supported in a way that I didn't even realize, or had a community that I didn't even realize. And my second year of law school, I made the decision that I wanted to run for the national chairperson of the National Black Law Student Association. There are certain things that are very unique to people of color, and there are certain things that are very unique to law students of color in terms of the struggles that they face and they overcome. I mean, I've thought a long time about this award and receiving it, and whether I should even accept it or not accept it. And for me, to be honest with you, it is almost like putting closure to something that happened to me 25 years ago. 25 years ago, in May, I was elected national chair, and it was something that the law school really did not support me in. And so it was a very painful and hard journey. And then when I graduated in May of 1994, I was never even acknowledged for it. So that was very difficult. So being sort of acknowledged now for something that happened all those years ago is actually, I guess, brings a sense of closure, or it brings a sense of that even with time, that, you know, people will acknowledge what you do, or they will, you know, find value in what you do. And so sometimes you're going to do it, you know, whether, you know, in the moment it makes sense, or whether in the moment it causes you to have whatever you're looking for. So I think that's a great thing. But I have to also say, being honored with the Honorable Joe Biden is also a very big moment for me, because of the fact that he was my keynote speaker for my graduation, and I actually was a classmate of his son, Bo. And so it means a lot that at this moment where he's being honored, that I'm sort of being acknowledged too, because it's almost like really coming full circle.
Way back when, I was a first-generation student, so I was the first in my family to graduate from college. My parents were adult immigrants, and so at a very young age, I was advocating on behalf of my family because of my English skills. Through the years, I always thought I would go to law school, and the critical need for that, to be able to advocate on behalf of others. Robin Malloy, he was fantastic. I took everything he taught at the time. He really made the law just so much more interesting to me. Marty Freed, you know, I had taken tax law with him, Federal Tax 1. He was tough, and those two really stick in my mind. I had taken a job with a large firm in Philadelphia, and at the time, I mean, I had no connection to Syracuse other than going to law school here, and never in a million years did I think I'd ever be back in Syracuse. But one fateful day, I received a phone call from one of my classmates, Jose Bahamonde Gonzalez, a very dear friend, and he called me to tell me that the job at Syracuse had come available to head the Career Services Office, and he felt that that would be a great job for me, and really pushed me to apply. And you know, he caught me on a good day. I'll never forget, because at the time I thought, what? I can't do that. But it was based on that call from Jose. As the Assistant Dean of Advancement at that time, you know, I had the privilege of being able to support the then Dean Hannah Arterian and the Board of Advisors in conceiving the vision that they had been talking about, which ended up being Dineen Hall. And so part of that was having the opportunity to work with really philanthropic people, deeply philanthropic. It was just an amazing opportunity to meet Bob Dineen, who graduated from the class of '66, and his wife, Jean Olivier. They were both senior partners, Sherman and Sterling in New York. His sister, Judge Carolyn Dineen King, a Fifth Circuit judge, her husband, Judge Tom Reevely, their late sister, Kathy Dineen Riston. And to watch those three siblings meet and, you know, decide how they wanted to honor their parents, who were also alumni. They're both their mother and their father, just an incredible story. And also weaving in their late brother, Lawrence, who had passed as a young boy. Working with them, working with, you know, Melanie Gray, Mark Malfitano. It was an unbelievable experience.
And finally, what does the Law Honors Award mean to you?
You know, I am so humbled.
I had a lot of outstanding professors in both the business program and the law program. I do recall in particular, I had Professor Kelder for criminal law my second semester there. And I was struck by his enthusiasm and passion that he had for teaching his class. And I recall at the time thinking that I needed to find a job that I enjoyed as much as he enjoyed his. I'm sure I learned a fair amount about criminal law, but certainly the bigger lesson that I learned from his class and others in the College of Law was that it was important to find something in the law, a part of the law that I really was interested in and that I had a passion for. I've always loved the courtroom. That was really something that, when I was at Syracuse, I was, determined to find positions that would allow me to be in a courtroom. So I've spent, literally my entire career in a courtroom. And so I've really applied the life lesson that I learned at the College of Law, was I needed to find things that I particularly enjoyed and that interested me. And I've been able to do that throughout my career. I think it's important for lawyers to, give back and to assist law students and young lawyers in developing the skills that they need to be, truly successful. I really enjoy coming back to Syracuse. It allows me to remain connected.
I applaud you all. You got to the finals, and so I got to the semifinals, and it worked out okay for me. So I think you have great future ahead of you.
All of the students that have participated in the competition have been very well prepared. They've been very bright, and I've enjoyed the arguments, and I've enjoyed meeting them. They have, an enthusiasm and a fresh perspective on the law that really invigorates me. So I hope that they get some benefit from me participating in their program, because I know that I derive great benefit from associating with them. I'm humbled to receive the award. I've looked back at the other people who are receiving it along with me and those that have received it in the past. And those that have are people who have made great contributions to their respective legal communities. And I'm simply honored just to be mentioned along with them.
It was a good community for me. I always felt included, and that is not necessarily the experience I had in my undergraduate school, which actually was here in Mississippi. But I felt included at the law school. I felt like it was a place where I belonged. I have kept in touch over the years with James Douglas, who was an associate dean. He actually picked up the phone and called me at my apartment in Mississippi on a Saturday afternoon when I was still indecisive about where I was going to go to law school. But I was still kind of committed to going to a place where I could leave home in the morning and have my mother's peas, cornbread, and sweet potatoes by that afternoon. And Syracuse was outside that radius. And he called me at my house on a Saturday afternoon, and he said, "You got your acceptance to Syracuse?" I said, "Yes, I did." And it's one of those calls where you stand up when you get it. It's like getting a call from the governor. So "This is James Douglas, Associate Dean of Syracuse." I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Are you coming?" I said, "Yes, sir." And then I hung up the phone and I told my wife, "I'm not going that far away." But then I thought about it more and decided to come. And I actually talked to him as recently as last week. And over the course of the years that I've practiced and been a judge, almost every professor in every class shared some information or taught me something that has proved useful over the years. Outside the classroom, though, Professor Gary Kelder coached the moot court team. And I participated in the Frederick Douglass moot court competition and then in the national moot court competition. And then he really had just a profound effect on me. And the attention he paid to detail, the interest he showed in us outside of the classroom is just something that I'll never forget. And it's part of the reason that I've tried to be committed over the years to mentoring and spending some time with kids, high school students, undergraduate students. And that inspiration comes at least in part from what Professor Kelder did for us on a moot court team. Of all the questions I've been asked, what this award means to me is probably the most difficult to answer, and it's the hardest one for me not to get emotional about. A lot of dreams have been realized, but a lot of things that I didn't even dare dream have been realized, and Syracuse University has so much to do with all of that. And so I'm incapable of expressing how much it means to me, but it is profoundly significant to me.
I want to thank the Alumni Association for this great honor and put me in with a very impressive group of alums. I really appreciate it. I wanted to go to law school since I got involved in the civil rights movement in my state of Delaware as a high school kid. And I selected Syracuse for two reasons. First, I was in love with a girl from Skin Atlas Lake who graduated from Syracuse was teaching in Syracuse, and you didn't move in those days together. Secondly, you gave me a scholarship. And over the years, Syracuse, when we were there from 65 to 68, were some of the most tumultuous years in modern American history. The day we graduated was the day that one of my only political heroes, Robert Kennedy, was assassinated after becoming the putative nominee. Dr. King was assassinated that same semester early on, and the war was still raging, and there was a lot at stake. And like a lot of you, I walked across that stage determined I was going to do something to try to change things. And so receiving this award means a great deal to me. Syracuse has been so loyal to me my whole career. You vouched for me anytime my character was questioned. You embraced my son, Bo, both in life and in death as a student there, and you followed up. And there's scholarships in his name at Syracuse now. So the bottom line is I'm indebted to Syracuse, and you've always had my back, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. And on a humorous note, my dean the year I graduated was a guy named Dean Miller, and my grades were lousy. And so he wrote a recommendation for me, and he never lied, but he said in the recommendation, quote, "If you can get Joe Biden to work for you, you'll be indeed fortunate." And I'm glad that he wrote that because he got me a good job, and hopefully I've met his expectations. But I want to thank you very much. It's a great honor. Sorry I'm not with you.